Okay, this is episode 3 of the Untamed podcast, and we have another special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, my name is Lionel. I'm a primarily carnivorous guy from New Jersey, and it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, as you know, I'm Aaliyah. I'm the host of this podcast, and I am in 14 days. I will be a 1 year carnivore. So, how long have you been doing carnivore for?
Uh, Officially, I started in November of 2023, so I'm about 1.5 years. But if I'm going to be completely honest, I've been really strict, but around 90 to 95%. But yeah, I've always been like a meat focused kind of guy, omnivorous, but I've never really feared meat. But as far as exclusively eating meat as the composition of my daily meal intake, that was a conscious decision in November of
Mm.
2023. So like a
Yeah,
year and a half.
hmm I agree with that a lot because when I started carnivore, I was actually more like animal based because I didn't really understand how it like worked when I
Yeah,
first started. So it was kind of, I didn't understand the whole like ketogenic thing yet. So I was carnivore, but I was still having like fruit and stuff. Because I didn't know the difference between carnivore and animal based, and I still can count my starting date as my starting date because that's when I was like in my mind I made the decision that I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna just eat meat, even though that's not 100% all the time. I'm not always 100% carnivore. Sometimes I'm more. It just depends on like what kind of season I'm in my life. Like if I'm on a vacation or something, I'm not gonna try and be 100% strict like lion diet like I would be if I'm having autoimmune issues
yeah, I feel
flare
that.
up. So I'll probably like when I was on vacation last year about this time. So it was like right when I started carnivore. I was carnivore, but I was having salad and fruit. So it was still more of like a whole food based diet. But when you're
Yeah,
on vacation and you just started this new diet and you're with your family and people are looking at you weird, they're like, you can't just eat meat. You're gonna sit there and be like, hey, everybody, look, I'm eating a salad. So, I definitely am never gonna be like, oh my god, you're not 100% strict. Like, whoa, that's a bad thing. Like, it's, I don't think I would have been able to do carnivore as well if I've done it if I didn't have that transition period where I had fruits and I had some vegetables and I had sweeteners. Like, I never would have been able to make it sustainable. And I feel like a lot of people can agree with that. And the carnivore police are
yeah,
gonna come after me, but that is what it is.
yeah. No, I totally get that. There's a lot of ways of looking at it. Like we're modern humans, and we've kind of like completely mastered agriculture, and it's so like ubiquitous throughout like the availability of what we're uh, what we're available to eat. And so, like the thing about how do I put this? Like at least in like the standard American diet, we've been kind of indoctrinated from birth until, the modern era. They're like you kind of need your protein intake, you need your carbs, your healthy carbs, at least, like your whole grain, your fruits and vegetables and things like that. And, at least as far as me, like, and as far as my upbringing, wherein my mother would always, make the meals that I was eating from childhood up until like, early adulthood. She would always have like a meat item as like the primary entree, So I was growing up, I was always eating beef, chicken, fish, salmon, different types of fish, tilapia. I could name pretty much, duck. I could name a lot of different meats. We pretty much exclusively excluded pork from our availability of meat because I grew up sort of Protestant Christian, but in our church we follow certain Old Testament dogmas. So in the book of Leviticus or some such, God told the Jews to exclude pork. He told them to exclude shellfish. So we pretty much just subsisted on beef, chicken, fish. We didn't eat pork. We didn't eat shrimp. We didn't eat crabs, things like that. But back to the main point. Like I get that people don't just jump into carnivore. Everyone in our modern society like eats meat and we eat our carbs and we eat our healthy carbs or we eat our ultra processed food. But it's either like you eat an omnivorous meal or you're going healthy and you go vegan. And the sentiment among carnivore is kind of a recent rediscovery of our capabilities. So I totally get that. People don't really jump 100% carnivore from the omnivorous thing. They sort of like do a lot of meat and then they eat their fruits and they slowly transition into removing that eventually. But yeah.
Okay, I don't want to like start this off with like a pretty heavy topic, but you were mentioning like the Jewish laws in Leviticus, and me and my boyfriend, we actually talk about this a lot because he was on the side of it to where like you follow the biblical eating laws and they're there for a reason, but I was also kind of on the side of like, but Jesus was the law and the law was like he abolished the law or whatever. And we both had like different reasons for why we thought that way. But I actually did a lot of research into it and just beyond the part where Jesus abolished the law, because that can be taken as either way. Because the Bible also says Jesus was not here to abolish the law, but he was here to fulfill the law. So there's like a lot of different ways that you can read into that. But I was actually reading in it was a book that Paul wrote. I can't remember which one it is. I have it written down on my phone, but I can't go look at it right now. But it was actually talking about how Paul had or maybe it wasn't Paul. I can't remember. Anyways, he had the dream, and it was like he was indulging in these non-biblical, non-Jewish law foods.
Yeah,
and he was talking to God.
that was, sorry to interrupt, but I know what you're talking about. That was a vision from Jesus to Paul,
Yeah.
wherein they right after Jesus had died, they were still following Jewish tenements or tenets, and after Jesus had died, he came to Paul in a dream and he unfurled a large white coat, and in it there were all of these animals, all the animals of the earth, and he said, "Eat." And Paul said, "But Lord, these are full of unclean animals." But Jesus replied back that, "Do not tell me," something along these lines. I'm a Christian, but I don't perfectly remember the scriptures, but I remember the lessons of it. But basically, Jesus said, "Do not tell me what is unclean that I have made clean."
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And well, there's other verses just beyond that where it was and you can read into it all you want. Like all you have to do is research. I actually have it written down somewhere, but I'd have to find it, and I'll post it in the description of this video if anybody wants to go look at it. But if you just look into why Jesus or why God set these laws in the first place, it was because shellfish, pork, these foods, if they're not from like a really clean source, which it was hard to find back in those days anyways, they carry worms and parasites and all this stuff if you don't cook them. And if you just look into history and how things work, like it was not a very common practice to cook your food. So you would eat, sorry, my rooster's crying. You would eat raw beef and raw fish because, be real, if you're out working your butt off in the fields, you come home, you're like, oh, I'm hungry. You're not going to sit there and be like, oh, I have to catch this fish and then I have to cook this fish. You're going to just eat the fish. So I can kind of see why God put those laws in place, but now we have the modern science behind why we need to cook these foods. And pork is also like just even without the tapeworm stuff, it's still very inflammatory. because pork is monogastric. So, even though Jesus abolished the law or made these foods clean or whatever, some people still go by that law and they feel better not eating it. Some people can tolerate it fine, some people can't. But there's a reason why God did the things that He did. So I think it's worth anybody who is curious about this to actually look into it from a standpoint of why God did these things and how it can apply to your life, because the Bible is very how you translate it, how it applies to your life. So one thing is going to mean something for another person is going to mean something totally different to another person, and I think that's very important to understand.
Yeah, no, I totally feel that. But I'd like to add on to that there's also sort of cleanliness issues as
Mhm.
far as proposed reasoning why God restricted these sorts of foods. So, like, the thing about pigs is that they're not really discerning in the stuff that they eat. Like, if you feed a pig, random garbage, they'll gobble that up, and even though like they'll be able to turn that into meat, that's still like completely like disgusting that they can turn garbage into meat. And the thing about shellfish is that they're bottom feeders. They eat the detritus, the the debris that falls down to the bottom of the ocean. And so that's pretty much an unclean sort of sea marine life. And we kind of want to focus on the clean multi-gastric like sea, with the four stomachs that are able to chew up and process grass. We want to focus on fish that are mostly carnivorous and they eat other fish, and outside of like mercury accumulation, they're a pretty clean, healthy source of meat. And it's a part of a larger conversation, I guess, about like from the beginning of the Bible's like proposed history of humanity. Like, you could believe in evolution that, 5-6 million years ago we evolved from primates that came out down from the tree. But going by the story of Adam and Eve, hundreds of thousands of years ago, in the book of Genesis, when we were in the Garden of Eden, there are scriptures that say that once God created man, He gave us dominion over every animal that was in the garden, but He didn't restrict us to only eating the animals in the garden. He said every meat and every herb. So even in a sort of Christian context, like carnivore, even though there's the story of Cain and Abel, wherein God favored the meat that was sacrificed by Abel, and He rejected the fruits and vegetables that were provided by Cain. God never really said that humans should only eat meat, and it's part of the genetic uh, adaptation that we've had going back to like 6 million years ago. We evolved from primates. Like, we used to be frugivores that lived in trees and ate fruits pretty much every single day, lived in trees, and then we came down from the trees and we started eating animals. So even though now in the modern era, in our modern genetic evolution, carnivore is the optimal diet for a human being. We still have the genetic and digestive capabilities to eat both plants, certain plants, and every single animal. So it's all, you have to learn the entire context of our history and our faith and our religious doctrines, and we have to realize the nuance that goes into every single facet of everything that we follow.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. And the reason why I think carnivore is like the optimal human diet is because if we look at when the garden was created, these fruits, these vegetables were clean, and we corrupted ourselves. As humans, Adam and Eve corrupted themselves, and God was like, you now have to go make your own food. You have to hunt your own food. And the first kill was actually made by God. So what I think about a lot is there's like until we get to heaven, we really won't know the answer to this. But I wonder if God like genetically I have the word in my head, I can't pronounce it. I wonder if we're genetically dispositioned to not be able to handle plants and vegetables as easily as if we were to digest meat, because we sinned, we fell. And plants, if you think about it, are so much easier to come by. Like if you're an actual primal human being, like you're living in these times, you would have to hunt the food, you'd have to skin it, you'd have to fillet the meat, you would have to chew it. Chewing raw meat is sinewy, it's hard. The bone, you have to cut through it. Like you're gonna eat nose to tail if you went through all this effort to hunt down this deer or whatever. A plant, all you gotta do is pick it up and eat it. So we made life harder on ourselves. And then also you can look at it from the standpoint as plants then are not even similar to the fruits and vegetables we have now. Fruits were not high carbohydrate foods. They were not sweet. They were full of seeds, and there was very little actual like fleshy fruit part in them. And the same thing with vegetables. They were not grown in abundance like they are now. You found them in the wild. And even if you look at okay, say you have you're babysitting a kid, 5-year-old, whatever. They go outside, they eat a bush. They eat a berry off a bush. You're not going to look at the kid and be like, "Oh, you did so good. You hunted down your own berries." You're going to call poison control and be like, "Hey, this little kid ate these berries. Are they poisonous?" Because plants are naturally harmful to us, and we look at them as superfoods, but in all reality, everybody knows somewhere subconsciously that plants are not good for you. They're not the best optimal source of anything. And especially with GMOs and glyphosate and pesticides that are being sprayed on them, like I just can't see how people really think these things are like health foods, unless you're just like super brainwashed, which most people are.
Yeah, it's part of the sort of conversation about like we're in this modern era, and it's part of the recent indoctrination propaganda sort of message wherein now that we've mastered agriculture and we have these wide swaths of land in the middle of our country that are you're in the United States. Yeah. So we have these wide swaths of agricultural like uh, partitioned land in the Midwest, where we pretty much exclusively dedicate them to these monocrops, to the growth of wheat, corn, soy, uh, whatever like staple crops, what have you, that are pretty much meant in order to be sort of a fallback source of nutrition in order to provide enough food for 350 million people.
Oh yeah.
You know, the thing is, although I support, sorry, let me just finish this point. The
Okay.
thing is that I support the carnivore diet as the optimal human diet, and that every human would thrive if we were to only eat meat. But the thing is that if 350 million Americans were to go carnivore tomorrow, there's pretty much not enough meat on the continent in order to support us. And it all stems back to like, after the ice age, wherein like the woolly mammoths that we used to hunt, they went extinct, the mastodons, they went extinct. We had to find an alternative source of nutrition, and we were scrambling to find anything that would keep us alive with the loss of like the really fatty like mastodons and woolly mammoths. And so we used our superior brains in order to figure out how to isolate the vegetables. We figured out how to like crossbreed the fruits in order to make them as carby and sweet and palatable as possible. So it all just basically ties down to, it started as we started agriculture in order to survive, and now that we mastered it, big business and big agriculture just wants to maximize their profits, and so they kind of indoctrinate us into thinking that we need plants, even though we absolutely don't. And now that we have the definitive, not really definitive signs, but like we see that like the negative effects of eating too many plants. Eating too many high processed carbs, eating too much fruit, even too much fruit. Like the thing about fruit is that it's glucose, fructose, and fiber. And we know what happens when you have too much glucose. We know what happens when you have too much fructose. We know that fiber, causes digestive issues. So we know that even though plants keep us alive if we have nothing else to eat, they're pretty much inherently unhealthy. But because the narrative is that from our authorities and like the people that sell these fruits and vegetables to us is that they're healthy, we think that we need them, which is unfortunate.
I agree with that. The way I've always looked at it, and even when I was like really young and I was reading the Bible, I was like, grains are starvation foods. Because if you look back at like Joseph, the one with the coat of many colors, when he got chosen to be like Pharaoh or whatever happened, he stored grains for the 7-year famine. He did that. 7-year famine, they took grains. They didn't take fruits. They took grains because they store for a long time. They're cheap and easy to produce, and they work as a starvation food. They are meant to keep you alive. They're not meant to fuel muscle growth and hormone production. They're meant to keep you alive. And I've always thought about this because when you look at Native American culture, before or even like right when the humans, Europeans started coming into America, what Native Americans did was they ate bison and buffalo and deer and elk and all these things. I mean, it depends on what part of the continent they were in, but they ate meat. They dried it, they preserved it, they made pemmican. And when their sources ran low was then when they supplemented with plants. So they knew that meat was primarily a good source of protein, a good nutrient. It was easy to you kill one bison, you can feed the whole village, basically. You have to have 100 ears of corn to do that. And when you look at the first Thanksgiving in America or whatever, the Indians are the one who went and hunted the meat, and the Europeans are the one who planted the corn and brought all of this and that. And even though the Native Americans were the one who taught them to do this in this new piece of property that they had, because obviously the Europeans didn't know how the American soil was. Still, the Native Americans were the one who went and got the meat, and if it wasn't for the sheer vast amount of people they probably had to feed it, I think it would have been a primarily meat-driven feast. And there's a lot more that goes into that, and obviously we don't know a lot about Native American culture and habits before the Europeans crossed over, because it's not really recorded, and there's so many different Native American tongues and languages, there's not really any kind of like written history on Native Americans from Native Americans. So it's really hard to know, and if you research it, all of it is just pure speculation. So obviously it could be wrong, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points, and it totally makes sense. Starting from the biblical sort of aspect of it, like the thing about if a person was considered to be blessed by God, they would have a bountiful flock. A lot of figures in the Bible weren't really like agriculturally focused. They were people that were shepherds. They had a flock of like herds of livestock, and the thing about it is that since meat is so nutritious and so nutrient dense, it would make sense that keeping your herd alive in order to feed your community was considered, and having like God bless you to have such a bountiful flock, that would make a lot of sense. And even in like semi-modern like cultures, like I think I heard somewhere that The Mongols, who were considered to be like the apex of like physical and war capabilities. In their culture, like it's a nomadic, herding sort of culture wherein you have to take care of your livestock, your yak, and it was very much meat centric. It was very much dairy centric, and even in when you think about the description of Canaan, the promised land, how did God describe it? He didn't describe it as this land of like, oh, you're gonna have all the plants you can eat. It was described as the land of milk and honey, And where does milk come from? It comes from a lot of cows, a lot of livestock. So, a bountiful source of milk will have a bountiful source of livestock, and I guess honey would be the supplemental sweetness, but and even like thinking back, like we didn't sacrifice like plants, we didn't sacrifice our harvest to God. We sacrificed the fattiest, healthiest cattle in order to appease God. God gets the best meat of your flock, and that's what He wants. So it's always been like humans have always focused on keeping our animals alive, and that agriculture has always been like sort of something that keeps us, from starving to death. And when you think about what goes into maintaining each of those two different sources of nutrition, like you pretty much just have your birds, your cattle roam around eating grass, and that's pretty outside of keeping them corralled, like with your dogs or just your presence as an authority figure to them. It's you're not really doing much. But the thing about agriculture is it's so labor intensive. It's so time consuming. Like you have to wait months for the plants to germinate. You have to wait months for it to grow up. You have to make sure they're watered every single day, and then you could lose the crop to disease or whatever. But livestock is comparatively like you can harvest, to put it callously, you can harvest like veal, very young, like that's a young cattle. You can harvest that in a couple of months, and that'll keep you fed until like the rest of the flock grows to maturity. Um, and it's really just like when you look at the evolution of the human species, there's all of our oldest like tools have been things that have been focused and like we used our brain power in order to create things that were more efficient for hunting animals in the wild. So like the oldest like fossil is a 400,000-year-old spear, So we don't really think about like really old tools of that were. We don't really think about old shovels or old hoes. Like we find old spears, we find old bows and arrows. We have cave paintings wherein we're depicting ourselves hunting mastodons and pigs and giant warthogs. We don't really see pictures of us like harvesting uh, plants, things like that. So it's really just like when we look at like the signs of our history, the messages in our religions, wherein like the signaling of being blessed by God is, you're gonna have a lot of meat, you're gonna have a lot of dairy to eat, and that'll be a signifier that you've been blessed by God, and just you have to look at the whole message, you have to look at the whole history and sort of tie that into how meat is like our optimal and our what we really want to be eating.
Yeah, I agree a lot with everything you said. Like meat is definitely, I mean, what a lot of vegans like to argue is the story of Daniel, and Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, whatever their Hannah, like their Hebrew, whatever you want to call them. They like to argue in the Bible that when King Nebuchadnezzar I think it was him. He was the one who captured them and brought them to Babylon. Or was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was Babylon.
I may be wrong, but I know.
No, I know the story you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, you're on the right track.
Okay, so Daniel was like, the king was giving them unclean food. If you look at it, he was giving them meat that was unclean, that was not up to the Jewish law. So Daniel was like, hey, I'm not eating this. Just give us plants and vegetables. And the miracle of this is only eating plants and vegetables, the boys and the girls grew stronger than the rest of the kids who were eating the unclean food. But a lot of vegans like to argue that, Daniel's telling us that vegetables are better than meat. That's not what the story's about. The story's about Daniel was showing his strength and how much he believed in God and what God was telling him to do, that he refused these unclean foods and only ate vegetables. Well, obviously, the significance of the story is that Daniel obeyed God's laws, but also it wouldn't have been so miraculous to everyone around them if Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians thought that vegetables were the best source of everything. They would have been like, okay, that's normal. So they knew that meat was better than vegetables in a sense. So when they saw this amazing transformation from these little scrawny Jewish kids to these grown men or whatever they ended up being, that were so strong in their faith, that was a miracle. That's when they realized that, hey, this kid's not wrong. Their God is really here, because they've seen what happened when people only eat vegetables. They've been through famines. They know what happens. So I feel like people who argue this point, just do it so they have something to say that is backed up biblically. And yeah, you can argue it that way, but then the story wouldn't be significant at all. It would have no meaning behind it. Yeah. And Daniel was a vegan his whole life. He only ate leafy greens and vegetables, but God's a miracle worker, and he can, if you obey him and do what he says, he's going to provide for you. So, I mean, I really don't I see it, but I also don't see how vegans can be like, oh yeah, this and that.
Yeah, I like to look at it as, even though carnivore is like nutritionally the most and evolutionarily the most optimal diet for a human being, like, the important thing of living life as a Christian man or woman, is to follow God's tenets, to be generous, to maintain your faith, recognize that Jesus is our Lord and Savior. And the thing is that, like, even Jesus didn't really exclusively feed people with only meat. The story about the fishes and loaves. God saw that he had the people gathering around him and they were hungry, and so he saw a young child have 2 fishes and 5 loaves of bread, and so he didn't really only take the fishes. He took what was available to him, and he miraculously multiplied it in order to feed people. So, even though carnivore is the optimal, like, nutrition, you have to recognize that plants and meat are things that we are able to digest. They're things that we can derive nutrition from. And even though, like, you'll feel your best on meat, on only meat, like, that does, if you eat an omnivorous meal or if you're a vegan, that doesn't mean that you're any less of a Christian. You're just trying to survive in this world where not every meal is promised to you tomorrow. You have to find the meals. You have to find the meals that are presented to you. But relating to your story of Meshach and Abednego and the king of Nebuchadnezzar, that ties into the point that you have to maintain your faith above everything else. Even though, like, let's say that the 3 Jewish boys knew that carnivore was the optimal diet, they probably still wouldn't have eaten the king's unclean meat, because they knew that unclean meat was not in line with God's command for Jewish people to eat unclean meat. So they opted in for these vegetables in order to maintain their faith and maintain their commitment to God's laws, as far as like how He commanded the Jewish people to eat.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think vegans look at it from more of a food standpoint. And if you really, I mean, if you're really interested in the Bible and the meanings behind what's in it, you'll kind of see it not so much from a food standpoint, but like the faith standpoint, that they stood strong in their faith. And that's kind of all that I really have to say on that. So, do you fast at all, like on carnivore?
Yeah. So I didn't. I just like you. I kind of went from a omnivorous, meat-heavy diet for most of my life. For the first like 27, 28 years of my life, I was mostly meat-heavy omnivorous, and then I discovered keto, and I learned about keto and intermittent fasting within the same time frame. And I was kind of focused on maximizing the health benefits of these two new concepts of nutrition. And so I mainly focused on like the ketogenic, like nutritional aspect of like meats, focus on the protein, reduce the carbs, and like intermittent fasting is kind of like the cherry on top of that. But when you fill up with mostly meat or exclusively meat, you're filled up for most of the day. So I just naturally gravitated towards intermittent fasting, and I still maintain it. And I've maintained it throughout this, health journey. Even when I like kind of cheat and have like uh, implement carbs in the form of like ice cream or occasional cookies, like I'll still intermittent fast, because like I recognize that like nutritionally and metabolically, we really shouldn't be eating multiple times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I reckon and you could get into the nutritional science of like insulin and like when you eat multiple times a day and you spike insulin and you have these carbs, like that's not really good. But it's mostly like when I have a carnivore, I eat one meal a day, so I'm like OMAD. I before we started this podcast, I had 10 ounces of beef hamburgers, and I had 6 ounces of like pulled pork on top of it, and I shredded a bunch of cheese on top of it, and I had 2 eggs, and that'll last me for the next 20, 24 hours. I'm gonna go through the rest of my day. I'm gonna go to work, and then I'm gonna come home from work, and then I'm gonna have my meal. And so, I do intermittent fast. I do one meal match. I have one meal a day. I just load it all onto my plate, eat that, and then completely satisfied.
Oh yeah. So I've done
Oh, and
OMAD. I've
my
done.
1 cup of coffee.
Oh yeah, I have coffee too, and I
Yeah.
need to stop doing that because it's really bad for your hormones. But one thing at a time.
I'm not gonna argue against that. Like, coffee is not carnivore. It's got like objectively, it's got like caffeine is a neurotoxin. But as far as the conversation about coffee on carnivore is that it all depends on how you feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel too bad when I drink my coffee, especially if I mix heavy cream and like creamer in it. I'm a drink.
Okay, so I've done OMAD, I've done 16A, I've done 18-6, I've done 3 meals a day, I've done all the things, and when I feel best is doing like 16A or 18-6. Really, it's more like I eat my meal within like a meal in 1 hour and then a meal 1 hour later, because females, especially in this modern era, are like taught to not eat anything. So for a while, I had to eat a lot of dairy to like up my appetite, because you know how that like makes you more hungry. So I had to eat a lot of dairy. I had to space out my meals and all this stuff. And then once I finally had my appetite to where I could sit down and just eat, it was easy. And I did Lion Diet. I don't know if you know this. I did Lion Diet for like 50, almost 50 days. It was close to 50 days. And that was the easiest way to do OMAD ever, because once you get your appetite where it needs to be, you can eat like I could eat a whole 2-pound pot roast, one sitting, done. And then when I transitioned back to normal carnivore, I kind of got off of the one meal a day kind of thing. And then I started eating, then I started grazing food, and then I started drinking coffee right when I woke up. And now I'm trying to go back to where I am, because I really do feel best when I've fasted. I eat in the morning and then I don't eat till the next day. I can't do eating at night because I work outside all day in the summer. It's like 14, like anywhere from like 3 to like 15, 16-hour days in the sun all day. I will get dizzy. I will get sick if I don't eat in the morning. I have to eat in the morning. Like, I don't, some people are different. Some people can do it at lunch. Some people can do it at dinner. I personally feel better doing it in the morning. And the only thing that's hard about that is once I open the window to eat, closing it has been the hard part for me, trying to transition back to one meal a day. Because I'll eat, and then like 6 hours later, I'll be hungry. And it's not because I didn't eat enough, but it's because I've gotten used to being able to just eat whenever.
Yeah, the thing about like eating windows and timing on carnivore or carnivore-ish, depending on what sort of additions you add to your meat, such as seasonings, dairy, is that it doesn't impact your metabolism too much. People like to focus on OMAD or versus CMAD, and they think that OMAD has a benefit over like CMAD because like you're getting all of your meat and your nutrients in one meal a day. But after looking into the research and like how exactly like meat stimulates your hormones, I don't think it really matters too much as long as like you're getting all of the nutrition that your body needs. And I like the point that you made that like females, women are different. Like you guys have different nutritional requirements compared to men. Like I think that if I remember correctly, women need to eat more fat because you guys are more hormonally dependent, even though that's not really accurate. Like men have hormones too, like our testosterone. Like we require more protein in order to lift heavier things. But as far as the one meal a day versus 2 meal a day, like meat and fat doesn't really stimulate insulin to a significant degree. So as long as like if you're feeling hungry, like if you feel that you need more meat because like your hunger signals are telling you, oh, like I haven't eaten enough nutrients, then I don't think it matters whether you like eat a huge meal in like one meal a day or you eat like two smaller meals and 2 meals a day. As long as like you get your protein requirements, as long as you get enough fat with the fat soluble vitamins in them. And the thing about that really like influences that is like whether you add additions to that, like seasonings, like you add sugar to your coffee or like heavy your dairy, like cheese. I noticed that like cheese does instill a little bit more hunger. Like even though I eat one meal a day, I do still feel like a minimal decent amount of hunger in the hours leading up to my meal. So I work a third shift. I work overnight. So I ate my breakfast at 10 o'clock, and then I don't eat until 10 o'clock in the next day. And so I'll go another 6 hours and then I'll go to sleep at like 4 o'clock. And then I'll wake up at like 10 o'clock and go to work, 10 p.m. and then, come home at like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. And so I don't really feel the need to snack. We have lunch breaks at work, and I don't feel the need to have like a carnivore snack. I don't need like a hamburger patty or like take some ground beef with some eggs. The big meal of like 2 hamburger patties with some pulled pork and eggs and cheese, that'll last me 24 hours. And even though I feel a little bit hungry, I do have enough energy to get me through my workday without needing to eat. So it's really my thoughts on like OMAD versus CMAD with food. Like it's really mostly about getting the macros, like the protein and fat that will provide you enough energy throughout the day, throughout the 24 hours. And if you want to like do extended fasting, like 36 hours past that, that'll tie into that.
Well, Oh my god, my light keeps on turning off. Anyways, Dr. Robert Kiltz is a fertility specialist for men and women, but he mostly talks about women's hormones. And he's do you know, are you familiar with him?
I'm familiar with him, but I haven't watched many of his content. You know, I'm more of like the Barkay, Anthony Chafee,
Mhm.
the Ken Berry kind of, YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of hop all over the place because everybody's got a different opinion. Like Maria Emmerich and Laura Spath and Anthony and Kelly Hogan, like they all have different views on this, so it's cool to watch it. But Dr. Robert Kiltz, he talks a lot about one meal a day for women, and eating enough, and mostly eating beef. But he also talks about why he thinks OMAD is important. Um, so if you can eat enough, is what I'm gonna say. And when you're first starting out, never overcomplicate it. Just do what you can. But if you can eat enough in one sitting and your body digests it, then you give your stomach time to heal after you digest the food, and that's really important if you've got like autoimmune issues or like hormone imbalances or like fertility issues, because when your body's trying to digest food, it's spending less time trying to heal yourself, and that's why autophagy works. Um, so I agree with that. And if you're not fueling your body enough, you're not eating enough calories or fat or protein in general, this is not going to work. But if you are and you can do that, then that's why a lot of that's why he recommends OMAD. And then there's other people like Maria and Craig Emmerich who are kind of the opposite. They're like, lower your fat to lose weight and up your protein. And they do that from like, if you have fat on your body, you want your body to burn that fat instead of fat that you're eating. But she also says that if you have really bad hormone imbalances like PCOS or endometriosis or anything like that that you're trying to fix, that you shouldn't do the protein sparing fasting. So I like to look at it from each one of their points is valid and it makes sense. So I guess it just depends on where you are in your carnivore journey, what you're gonna do. Because I've changed it up. I've done all the things, and I personally feel best doing one meal a day if I can eat enough. And I've gone through periods where I couldn't eat enough. Like when I first started carnivore, I was already kind of intermittent fasting before I did that. So it was really hard for me to eat that much meat and fat in one sitting. So I split my meals up, and then that worked great. And then I switched back, and it was great. So I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore. So
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. You know, it ties into the point wherein like every human is individual as far as like their digestive capabilities. You know, like what OMAD, one meal a day, does not work for every single person. It doesn't work for every single person's situation as well. Like some people don't have the time to like sit down and eat a gigantic meal. They don't have enough digestive capabilities or like bile in order to eat like a pound and a half in one sitting. Like they need to split that up into two meals, split over a couple of hours. Like, you know, give your stomach some time to process the first medium meal, you know, reset, intake some more meat because, you know, they have certain requirements for protein and fat. But or they just don't have the time where, like, you know, I pretty much dedicate 45 minutes to an hour in order to sit down and eat my own meal a day, and I feel, you know, lucky that I have enough leisure time when I can sit down and put on a YouTube video and just, you know, eat my gigantic meal. But it's really like the thing about, I like how you mentioned autophagy, where, you know, eating isn't just, oh, you put food into your body and like, oh, just digest. Digestion is a metabolic process that has many different effects. So, like, it stimulates inflammation. You know, you're diverting blood flow into your digestive system in order to process nutrients. Especially if, like, so I'm not strict with my carnivore. I'm not lion diet. I only eat like meat. So, like, on my meal of hamburger, pulled pork, cheese, and eggs, I do sprinkle some hot sauce on it. So that's gonna intake a little bit, like 5 to 10 grams of carbs. And even though I eat OMAD, that's still like 5 to 10 grams of carbs. So that's gonna mess with my digestion system a little bit. That's gonna mess with my hunger a little bit. I do feel a little bit of hunger, but it's all about, like, it depends on what you're eating and how much you're eating, and that ties into like how your hunger signals are going to be affected throughout the day. It's going to affect like your digestive capabilities, and if you, I would suggest that if you are trying to transition from multiple meals into 1 meal a day, your body is able to adapt into the conditions that you place it in. So if you truly want to shift from 2 meals a day into 1 meal a day, I would suggest that in your first meal of the day, you should slowly try adding more and more meat and reducing the meat in the second meal. And that'll possibly increase your digestive capabilities, such as producing more bile, um, stimulating more bile release in that first meal so that you're able to digest a larger meal in one sitting, you know. So it all depends on, but really, I think the important message is to listen to your hunger signals if you are, at least if you're semi to really strict with your meat and fat intake, like,
Mm-hmm.
5 to 10 grams of like hot sauce or carbs doesn't really affect my hunger. So I'm able to comfortably do 1 meal a day. And if you're eating even lower than that, like your hunger and satiety signaling from just meat and fat are definitely going to tie into you needing exactly how much meat you need for each and every day.
Oh yeah. So I don't think I'm nearly as strict as you are because, well, this has just been recently. Because after I did Lion, I wanted to see what I could tolerate and what I couldn't tolerate after adding back in all the carnivore food. So I can tolerate cocoa if it's organic cocoa, and like a couple other seasonings and stuff. So I have a chocolate collagen powder that I put in my raw milk, and oh, I can tolerate raw dairy. So I think, because my problem is now with 1 meal a day is like I digest my food so quickly, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So I don't know. Like let's say if I'm trying to do OMAD, even though half the time it's not successful anymore. I'll eat like a pretty decent sized steak, some eggs, a little bit of cheese, um, like a glass of raw milk if I have it with if I bought some, and maybe a coffee after I eat. I always wait till after I eat because then I won't be hungry enough to actually eat. Um, and then I'll be hungry later in the day. So I'm not sure if the dairy that I'm eating or like the small amount of chocolate carbohydrates that I'm having. Oh, and it's sugar free, by the way. The chocolate powder sugar free.
Okay, you're talking about the cocoa collagen.
Yeah, it's just cocoa like flavored collagen powder.
Do you have that every day, or
No, not every day, just like occasionally.
okay? Okay.
It's more of like a treat when I'm feeling like it. But it doesn't flare up my autoimmune, so I'm not really worried about it that way. I'm just wondering if it's either the raw milk or like just the dairy in general that's like making me more hungry than I normally am, because I have tracked my calories, and for a 5 foot tall person, I can eat 3,000 calories a day, no problem. I could probably go more than that. So I don't know if it's just. I mean, I do work a lot. I'm outside a lot. I'm working with horses all the time. I'm doing farm work, and I know that's very strenuous on your body, but still, like I wear a smart ring. I wear an Apple Watch. You can probably see the tan line from it, or maybe not. Like you can a little bit, most of the time. So from what I'm tracking, I'm not burning more than like 900 extra calories a day. So my basal metabolic rate is like 2,500 calories. I don't think I should be eating 3,000 plus calories a day. And I know some people think calories are irrelevant on carnivore. I'm not one of those people. I think if you need to track it, then do. If you don't, then don't worry about it, obviously. I've been trying to get down to the bottom of that, but since I did lion, I really don't want to go back strict again because that was like awful. It was good for a while until it wasn't anymore. So.
Well, I'll point to. Well, I'll just quickly give my experience with like only eating meat and fat, like lionish. I definitely recognize that I felt the best that I've ever been, and it definitely cleared out any sort of sensations of ache, joint pain, inflammation. I definitely felt that sort of superhuman feeling that Anthony Chaffee describes as like how a human should feel. And so that's partly why I definitely believe that like lion diet is the optimal diet. But the thing about my reasoning for not eating strict is because I just like the taste of like hot sauce. I like the dopamine feeling of the spiciness. And I come from a culinary background where growing up, my mother would have me in the kitchen helping her out to cook. So I really know how to like cook, and I definitely enjoy the aromatic and flavoring side of like seasonings and spices and things like that. So I recognize that like carnivore is the optimal way. So I don't like add in like vegetables. I don't add in like fruits. I never like fruits outside of like fruit juice. I guess orange juice, apple juice. That's kind of like juice. That's kind of like liquid candy. But yeah, it's pretty much just on my carnivore diet. It's pretty much just meat, eggs, cheese, and hot sauce. And I use the hot sauce because it's low carb. It's diluted with vinegar and things like that. But yeah, no. The thing is that like that ties into to your point about it's probably the dairy that's stimulating your hunger and why you're always like hungry. It's you have to look at the entire picture of how you're living your life. Like you did mention that you're out in the hot sun all day. That could be it could be many different things. Like you could have an electrolyte balance, and you're kind of maybe craving some more sodium or potassium or magnesium. The dairy does stimulate hunger in a lot of people, and I recognize that too. I don't eat raw. I don't drink raw milk or like clean aged cheeses. I get like supermarket cheese. Like it's not like ultra processed cheese with like 30 different chemicals in it. It's like Gouda, which is like milk and bacterial cultures. Like it's clean supermarket cheese. But I definitely noticed that like I'll eat like 2, 3, 4 ounces of cheese on my meal, and it'll definitely make me feel hungry. But when I ate like lion diet of only like hamburgers and eggs, like I definitely felt that full satiety, and I was able to do like extended fast, no problem. So it's really like the thing about hunger is that they're signaling deficiencies. They're signaling that like you might have exercised a lot throughout the day, because I work a blue collar job, so I do like I'm physically up and about, but I don't feel that intense hunger where I need to bring a lunch to my work site. I'm pretty much running off of the meal that I had like 12 hours beforehand, and it recognizes that the hunger is there, but I know that I'm nutritionally sufficient from the large one meal a day that I had, that I know that I can power through it, and I know that the energy is in my body. I know that I have the fat stores in order to provide me with energy, and I know that I'm in ketosis, and I'm provided with that sort of energy. And so, it's really like recognizing that, yes, the dairy is stimulating your hunger, but you should also recognize that you have the fat stores, you have the energy stores already in your body to provide you with the energy you need throughout the day. And if you're really feeling ravenous, then maybe you have like an electrolyte issue, maybe you're thirsty or dehydrated or something like that. But I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just giving my sentiments about what I've read about the nutritional workings and metabolic workings of how this diet works in our body and how, like, humans humans didn't eat every single day. Historically and evolutionarily, we didn't eat every single day. We didn't. The conversation about one meal a day versus two meal a day, like for millions to hundreds of thousands of years, like we used to eat what we hunted. And we didn't used to like eat for days or weeks. We used to just like stake out a hunting spot and like wait for a prey to come by. So that's a point that really helps me to like power through the days where I'm like hungry, but I know that I have the fat storage because my ancestors didn't used to. I'm gonna be too tired because I didn't have a second meal a day. Like, no, my ancestors used to go like days, weeks without having a kill to eat. So if I can't like get through a day without eating 1 pound of meat, like that's to put it plainly, like that's kind of weak of me.
Yeah. Oh, I think about that a lot because, well, it's hard when you have people who like enable you to like break your fast. Like you're like, oh, I'm hungry. They're like, well, just eat, just eat. I'm like, well, no, I probably shouldn't because like I'm gonna. If I get used, I think my problem is I get used to eating so many meals a day because I was having like hormonal imbalances. So I was like, hold on, let me spread my meals out, make sure I'm eating enough, all this, and then I just got used to it. So now I was eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'd never done that. Like 2 years, I hadn't done that. Like even before I started carnivore, I was intermittent fasting, anyways. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So then I would eat breakfast, and I could get through not having lunch fine. But then it came dinner time, and I was like, I'm hungry, so I'd eat, thinking that I just hadn't eaten enough in the morning, and then I just kept on doing that, and I kept on doing that. And now I'm trying to realize that it's not that I was hungry. It's just that my body had adapted to having food at certain times. So breaking that has definitely been a challenge. But I kind of needed to stop being such a weenie because, like, it's at night, too. So I'm kind of, like, stupid about it because I'm like, I could just go to sleep and wake up in the morning and eat. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's hard when you have people like enabling you, and it's not from like the standpoint of their like trying to sabotage you. It's from the other point of like if you don't eat, you're gonna get like dizzy or sick or something. Because I've done that before too. Like I've done extended fasting and I've gotten like extremely sick from it just because I think my body's not completely fat adapted, even though I've been doing this for over a year. So I'm still having some issues with that. But that's okay. Like things take time. So
Yeah, if I'm gonna be honest, I did watch your episode 1 where you were going over your personal illnesses growing up, and what I can say about that is that meat and fat is the nutrients that are appropriate for you, but more to the point, they're the nutrients that heal you. So if you're only eating meat and fat, like you should listen to your hunger. Wherein, like, if your body's trying to heal from like years of abuse or years of an illness, like you need the protein to like repair your muscles. You need the fat in order to generate cholesterol, in order to repair your cells and things like that. You might be nutrient deficient. You might be micronutrient deficient. So, like I think you're probably fat adapted. Like I don't think it takes that long in order to metabolically shift from like an omnivore diet into like only eating fat and protein. It's mostly like maybe you have like some other hormonal issue. Maybe you're not generating enough bile. Maybe you're not like sticking to eating. I would suggest like I didn't used to be the same. I used to be the same way too. Like I used to eat 3 meals a day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Um, there's never been a point in my life where I was like plant based or funnily enough, like I never believed that like plants were healthier, but I didn't really like put thought into like, oh, meat is healthier. I was just like a omnivore where like, oh, meat is delicious, so I'm just gonna have meat in every single meal. I'm gonna have sausage for breakfast. I'm gonna have like a chicken sandwich for lunch, and I'm gonna have like a steak for dinner, and then I'm gonna have like my vegetables on the side. So throughout my life, I was always having like meat with every single meal. Even when I would have like a pizza, like the three toppings I would put on it were like pepperoni, ground beef, and like chicken.
Yeah.
So even when I was like omnivore, I was always eating meat, which probably contributed to why my story is different than like other people's on carnivore, when like they suffered for years with like gastrointestinal distress or like autoimmune issues, or like they had brain fog for decades and they never could figure out why. I didn't have any of that. I thought I was like a healthy, fast metabolism sort of guy, and then in my later years as I got older, my body couldn't take the high amounts of sugar that I was eating, and so I like looked up, oh, the sugar causes inflammation, because I was having like inflammation and pain whenever I would eat like sugar or plants or things like that. And that led me to keto. And then I discovered Anthony Chaffee. Like he's like, oh, carnivore is not only possible, it's optimal because you get all your nutrients from meat. And so like that was an instant transition. Like I didn't question carnivore. Like once I knew that only eating meat was possible, I instantly like threw away the broccoli and the healthy vegetables, like the keto vegetables that were in my pantry and fridge, and I only started eating meat. But back to the point, like it's really like if it all depends on your personal illness. I think like if your body will tell your brain like it needs meat in order to heal. Like if you suffer for years, even decades of like damage to your gastrointestinal, if you suffer for years from like autoimmune, like literally attacking your own cells, then you might need like more meat and more time in order to heal. But I, I I think that like you shouldn't think that you aren't fat adapted, because from what I've read about like the cells using glucose versus like fat, it only takes like maybe 3 to 4 weeks up to like 2 months in order for the cells to shift from like using glucose from plants and fruits and stuff into using like the fat from meat. So I think you're fat adapted. I just think you need more time to heal the years and decades of like whatever illness you've been suffering. But
yeah. Well, if I look back on like everything that happened, so I was pretty close to like what you were doing. I was like eating meat all the time. I was eating vegetables, and then I was eating processed food, which was whatever. Like I was never really big like sweet person, especially when I was like younger. Like I never really cared too much for sweets. It didn't really start until I wanted to start eating healthy, because I was always overweight, so that was whatever. When I started eating healthy, I started counting calories. I started making these like smoothies or whatever. I was eating a lot of soy milk. It was the lowest calories. So I would use that all the time in my coffee. I would eat a lot of fruit. I would eat a lot of flax seeds and all this stuff that's like very hyper estrogen. And then a couple months, like a year after doing that, is when my like hormonal when I started getting really bad hormonal imbalances. So my endometriosis and like all the stuff that goes with that, which is not technically considered autoimmune, but your body's attacking itself with all that it's doing. So yeah, that it is. and just like other problems that I've had problems with. It all started, most of it, except my migraines, all started right after I started eating healthy air quotes, you know. So, then is when I was like looking into diet more, and I was like, okay, low tox diet, cut out the meat, no red meat, like no gluten, obviously. And then I did that, and it just got worse. And I was like, what the heck? So then, like, my boyfriend sent me like a video of animal based taste. Her name is Sylvie or something like that. I don't know. He sent me a video of her. She was doing animal based. That's when I kind of started looking into animal based and like carnivore, and that's kind of when I started doing it. And those first couple months was when I noticed the most improvement. And then from there, it kind of just like dipped in and out. And I've always said, like, healing's not linear. It's not gonna, like, I can't just expect my body to just like heal. Like, you're gonna go through times where it's like your stress levels are gonna affect everything. So I've always kind of understood that, but I can definitely see like the clear turnaround point when I started getting issues. And I feel like for a lot of people, they don't know exactly when it happened, but I do, just because I was tracking everything so much, so I could see like the exact point, because it like came out of nowhere for me. It wasn't like it slowly started creeping up. It was just like one random day I was deathly ill.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like it was the exact same for me. Like for most of my life, I thought I was fast metabolism. I was, eating like meat, but I was also eating like processed food like pizza, French fries, potato chips, candy, and I wouldn't get like too fat. I had like water weight, and I had a little bit of a tummy, but I could still see my abs. And that's not even to like flex. It's just to describe like how I would eat this standard American diet, but I wouldn't get like the level of like overweight or obesity that like is if it that such a diet would affect most of the population. So I would take my metabolism for granted, and so I would continue to eat like whatever I wanted. And then in my early 30s, there was a point where I was pretty much eating candy and like drinking fruit juice pretty much every single hour of every single day. And then it was instant. Like suddenly my muscles were on fire. Suddenly I would have no energy. I was in pain. I didn't want to go to work. Like I would have lunch at work, and then I would feel instantly like horrible. And so I consider myself like lucky that like the thing that triggered my illness was so obvious, wherein like it was pretty much like candy and like excessive amounts of fruit juice, and I'm lucky that it happened in a time period where we know that like too much sugar is the cause of like these metabolic illnesses, because if this had happened to me like 10 years ago, people would be like, oh, you have diabetes, or oh, you have non-alcoholic fatty liver. We don't know the reason, so just take this drug, and I would have suffered for another like 10 years. But like even though it's a tragedy that I got like illness, like I'm lucky that it happened wherein we're in the information age, wherein we are able to like have these people that are explaining like, oh, low carb, keto is the way to go. Oh, carnivore is like the optimal human diet, and that like you're removing all these plant toxins and these plant estrogens that are messing with our hormones, and our digestive systems, and I'm sure that like, you just like me, you've tried the Lion diet, and like you felt how clear your body is, and then as we added like our particular like cheats or additions to our carnivore diet, like we know like how they affect our bodies. Like, it feels a little bit icky, but we were able to deal with that. Or like, we have a cheat meal when we're out with friends and family, and then we feel like, oh, we have that sort of ache the next day. And we're now like after going carnivore, we know exactly how the food that we put into our body affects our body and how it affects how we feel. And yeah, we're kind of fortunate in that we made this transition into carnivore and keto in a time wherein we're able to get the information and know exactly how these foods affect our bodies. And we have the explanation like, oxalates in our healthy greens and like the phytoestrogens and like soy and like things like that.
Yeah, and well, for me, I always say this, and I don't know if it's true. I don't think carbs were ever the issue for me. Like, I just think it was how corrupt food in general was like my issue, because I can, like, now I can eat a banana and be fine. Like, I won't have autoimmune symptoms. I probably will get sugar cravings, but it's not gonna like kill me. You know? And a lot of people who are on carnivore struggle with that whole like sugar addiction thing, and I understand that. Like, especially coming from like the health calorie deficit whole community for a while. Like, I definitely see like everybody's just addicted to sugar. Protein powder has sugar in it. Everything has sugar in it.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot get away from like the sugar.
Yeah,
So I definitely
like
understand that.
just like to really quick, like everything has like maltodextrin in it,
Mm-hmm.
and like even stuff that shouldn't have like seed oils. Like you look in the ingredients and there's like soybean oil in there, and like it's really like kind of devastating how like when you look at the ingredients and like you learn about like how our crops are being sprayed with these pesticides and glyphosate and all that. It's like it's in everything. We got to go like primarily meat based to get the cleanest food possible.
Yeah, it's definitely sucks because there's a lot of foods that I actually can tolerate, and fruits wouldn't like us because I feel. Well, I don't know necessarily if I feel better being in ketosis because I've done animal based and I haven't, and I've definitely noticed a difference in performance, but not so much as just like how I feel in general. Like, it's ultimately the same. But I lose weight when I'm in ketosis. I don't lose weight when I was doing animal based. Because obviously sugar makes your hunger signals go up a good bit. Um, but I mean, from a like just what I can tolerate standpoint, I can have fruits, and that would be good as like a treat every once in a while. Like, I could have fruit. I don't know. Sometimes I do. I still eat it sometimes, but it's like occasionally, and it's more of like a cheat than anything. Um. So yeah, I try and stay away from it for the most part because I don't want to be back in that spot where I'm like addicted to sugar. But I don't. I see. I say that I've never had that like carb addiction problem, but I think that's just because I wasn't doing it long enough. I feel like if I would have kept at what I was doing, I definitely would have been like super dependent on carbs. But I never really. The carnivore transition wasn't super hard for me. It was just lengthy. It took a long time. And I think it was more of a mental shift than a physical shift.
Yeah. As far as like my story, even though it was instant because from a very early age, like every kid doesn't want to eat their vegetables, but even when I was a child, like I was always like meat focused.
Mhm.
My mom would make like spaghetti meatballs, and I would instantly like eat all of the meatballs, and I would just put the plate of pasta and tomato sauce like away, and I'd be like, "Mom, I'm done. I don't want anything else." So, but the thing is that like when I learned that carnivore was like possible, it was instant, but it's just like I was also like eating a lot of processed food, like the sugary cereals, like the Lucky Charms
Yeah.
and the Count Chocula. I used to eat like cereal like that pretty much every single day for breakfast. But the thing about that is that it ties into that I was always like animal based or animal craving because from the time that I was a child, I didn't really want fruit juice. I was always like wanting milk,
Mhm.
you know. So the cereal was pretty much just a vehicle for me to like drink a lot of milk,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so like it was pretty much just like cut out the cereal, just drink a lot more milk. Um, but you know, like the thing about like carb cravings is that it's 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 an individual like human thing. Like everyone has their own individual taste. You know, some people really are like carb addicted, and it's not just like oh the taste of carbs are really delicious. They do affect your brain chemistry.
Mhm.
You know, like they spike dopamine, and then they kind of make you want more and more carbs, and you know they mess with your hunger, so you eat more and more carbs.
Mhm.
You know, and you know it all depends on how many carbs you eat, how much you really like those carbs, how little meat you're eating to like kind of offset the negative health effects of that, like your metabolism, like. And you mentioned that you know it's easier for you to lose weight when you're in ketosis, and that ties into like how carbs stimulate insulin.
Mhm.
And like the thing about dairy is that it has a little bit of lactose in it. I don't know if you're lactose tolerant, but there might be another mechanism towards that. But really, the point is that like it's easy. It's really easy to like lose weight and maintain like a 14 to 15% body fat percentage when you're only eating meat and fat because your insulin is always so low. And then when you add in carbs like you know a little bit of fruit or like some dairy, like that's when people notice that they saw their weight, you know, because
Mhm.
those things like have such a higher insulin stimulating effect compared to just meat and fat. So that's just something to consider. You know, a lot of people use the carnivore and keto as like a weight loss diet, but I like to think of it as it's the most nutritious, it's the healthiest diet where you don't have a lot of inflammation, you don't have these like digestive issues, you don't have these autoimmune issues. So whether like you know you have weight loss goals or whether you're at your optimal weight percentage or BMI percentage, it's really like you're getting your nutrient dense meat in. You're getting like you're not eating like these plants that have like plant toxins or these phytochemicals and these phytoestrogens that are messing with your hormones. That's pretty much the thing that I'm focusing on. Wherein like yeah, like Lion Diet is really strict in that the best you feel is only online. But it's really like you can get nutrition from like these plants. It's just that like they come with a host of other problems. And you
Mhm.
kind of want to limit that. And
Yeah.
you kind of want to focus on the meat.
Well, I was lying, and like the last week and a half, 2 weeks that I was doing it, I was actually so I didn't like seafood before doing Lion Diet. Now I enjoy it from time to time. I didn't like seafood, but I was having like super intense seafood cravings. And this comes from somebody who never I liked canned tuna. That was it. Like I was all that I would eat if I ate seafood, it was canned tuna. That's just cuz it tasted like chicken. So, I was having super like intense seafood cravings and like super I was having vivid dreams about eating eggs and seafood, which is not normal. So I was definitely I think I have histamine issues, which is why I think I feel better traditional carnivore than line diet because red meat, especially beef, carries a lot of histamine unless you just get it non-aged, and I do not have the money to go buy beef non-aged from somebody. Like I just don't. I can't order beef online. Like that's expensive. So I definitely feel better doing normal carnivore, and my auto actually surprisingly, Lyme didn't help with any of my autoimmune symptoms at all. They actually got slightly elevated, and I think that was just from like the amount of histamines I was consuming. Um, so I definitely feel better in normal carnivore, even with dairy. Like I think dairy gives me mood issues, but I don't think it's like bad enough to where I'm like concerned about it. And I think that's just because it makes me hungrier, so that's definitely going to give me mood issues. I get hangry. Um, So yeah, I felt the first 2 weeks of line were great. I felt like I was doing better, but then after that, it was like it was just I was struggling so bad mentally, and physically. So I think it's good to try to see how you're doing, but I don't think it's necessarily optimal.
Yeah, yeah, that ties into the every human is individual. You know, the kind of sentiment among the carnivore diet is that the best diet is beef, salt, and water. But you have to recognize that not every single human is like the same. Beef, salt, and water might work for most people, but some people have histamine intolerance. There's the alpha gal thing, which is like an exception to the rule, but it's like some humans can't tolerate beef. And I used to have a roommate that she told me she couldn't tolerate beef because she would only eat pork and chicken, and I wasn't gonna like invalidate her experience by saying, "Oh, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense." Some people know their bodies, and if beef affects you in a certain way, and like if you have histamine issues or you just can't tolerate it, then maybe you're just metabolically different than
Mhm.
the population. So just find a different source of meat in order
Yeah.
to get your optimal nutrition. Because even though cause beef maybe causes you issues, like the meat that you or the meat that you chose instead of beef is still healthier than like eating a plant-based diet. So,
Yeah. Well, and then also since it's been about a month or two since I've done lion, I've just not felt like attracted to eating beef. Like it's not something that I really want to do. And I don't know if it's just because I'm burnt out on it just from eating it every day. Because I had lamb and veal too, but it wasn't like I ate a lot of veal. Well, not really. I only ate veal like 3 times, and I ate lamb a couple times. I don't really like lamb a whole lot, but you really do get burnt out on just eating beef and beef and beef and beef. So now I don't know if it's just because I've realized that beef is giving me histamine issues, but cooked beef does not sound appetizing to me whatsoever. Like I've had beef that's just been sitting in my fridge for like ages, and I ended up putting it in the freezer so because I didn't want it to go bad. But like I've had raw beef, and I feel more able. I feel like I can. I don't like saying attracted because that sounds weird, but like looking at a cooked steak to me looks disgusting. If you give me a raw hunk of steak, I'm like, oh, that looks way more appetizing than cooked. And I know cooked meat has more histamines in it, so maybe it's just I don't know what it is. I still haven't figured that out. Like I'm just so genuinely confused with what's going on.
well, you should listen to your body, and you your body will give you the at least separate from carbs, your body will signal to you that it craves what it needs. And if you do have issues with beef and you aren't finding the taste of beef to be appealing, then I wouldn't necessarily say that that's like something wrong with you. Um, there are genetic like and evolutionary divergences, let's say, between like certain people, wherein like certain people definitely do better on pork, certain people do better on lamb. You know, so there's a whole range. We're very lucky in our modern era, wherein that like there's a whole range of like different animals that we're able to have access to if if we don't find the taste of beef appealing, then you can switch over to lamb, you can switch over to chicken, you can switch over to pork, and we're kind of lucky in that. Or you can like have chicken eggs,
Yeah, I've
yeah,
mostly
like
been living off of eggs, which is really
yeah,
like almost all that I eat.
and there's nothing wrong with that. Perfect timing.
I'm about to say, I'm gonna eat you if you don't shut up.
But like, eggs are definitely like just as nutritious as beef. It has a good protein
Hmm.
to fat like ratio. It's got the micronutrients in it. It's got choline. So like, if you're not finding beef to be appetizing or appealing, then just keep eating eggs. All I can say is that it's a shame because I personally like beef is the best meat. I love lamb. I got some lamb legs that were on sale for Easter, and I'm gonna barbecue those later, and I'm kind of excited for that. But beef and lamb are definitely like to me the best tasting meat, and I definitely could eat beef and lamb for the rest of my life. And then after that, it's like pork is okay, chicken is okay, eggs are really good. It's really like beef and lamb and cheese. If I could eat beef and lamb and cheese, if I had to choose those three things for the rest of my life, I wouldn't. I
Well,
don't think it would be too hard.
yeah, even cheese doesn't sound too. I'm kind of in a weird spot, so I really don't want chicken. I really don't. I'm okay with pork. But it's not. All I've been wanting to eat is raw milk and eggs and bacon, kind of. Sometimes I'm feeling it, sometimes I'm not. So I may just like one of the people I follow on Instagram, his name is Alex. He does like the raw meat thing, which I'm actually really interested in. I just I've tried it for like a day and I was just like I can't eat this much raw meat. Like I just can't. Like I have to adapt my body to it and I don't like a lot of people don't think it makes sense, but I think it makes more sense. So all I've been wanting to eat lately is eggs and raw milk and I really don't want cheese on it. um, I really haven't been craving coffee, but I'm kind of caffeine dependent, so that is what it is. And let me think. There's other foods that I've been trying to eat. I don't know, like really nothing other than eggs that sound good to me. But I think eggs have like a lot of like if you think about it, egg is like it grows a baby chicken. Like the yolk is what grows a baby chicken. That is like the perfect everything for like developing bodies. And I'm still my bones haven't fully fused yet because my feet grew like a half inch, um, which is really interesting because my growth was stunted for like ever and I started growing again. So maybe it's just like that is why I've been craving like only raw milk and like eggs just because like my body's growing again. It's like, oh my gosh, we're infants. We need more of this, whatever is in this that makes you grow. So I don't know. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing and just see what happens.
Yeah. As far as the raw meat thing, I guess it's that it does make sense. I don't think I would ever try it. It's more like I come from a culinary like background and I know how to cook, and it's really like people say that raw meat has more nutrients in it. You're not destroying the nutrients by cooking it, but really the point of carnivore for me is that yeah, it's nutritious, but more for me it's that it tastes the best.
Mhm.
Like, and the thing about frying meat is that it tastes getting a nice sear on a steak or like a hamburger with the crispy with the crispiness with the crispy crust. Like I cannot get enough of that, and I barbecue a lot, so like that's cooking meat to like until it breaks down. You know, and it's got smoke flavor in it. So I don't think I would ever be able to like give up those flavor profiles in favor of just like eating muscle meat from a kill.
Yeah, well,
And I'm not really like focused on like cooked meat still has nutrients in it, so it's
yeah.
like I don't really care about the 10 or 25% extra nutrients that are maintained by like it being raw. But everyone can do what they want, and if they want to optimize their health by
Mhm.
eating raw meat, then do you?
Yeah. Well, I think I just like I love baking, I love cooking. It's just something that I enjoy doing and I think that's why I've struggled with it because it's like, oh, I want to make carnivore cupcakes. Well, I can't really eat that, can I? And I've like a lot of people will do the raw meat thing and they'll still have like cooked meat or whatever like on occasion as like, you know, like if you go to a restaurant with somebody, you're not going to ask for a raw steak. You're just going to get it rare or whatever. And that is what it is. But I don't know if it's something that I'm super interested in. But every time I've tried it, I've like failed very quickly. So it's just either something I'm gonna have to wait till I've got just like less time on my hands and I'm just like I don't have time to cook, or I'm just not motivated to cook. And it's I can talk like I'm not the kind of person that's like ew raw meat gags. Like I'm just like whatever. I just can't do raw eggs. I can't do raw. I can do raw tuna. I can do caviar. I can do raw egg yolks. I can't do the whites. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I look at it as we're modern humans, and even though for millions of years we evolved from like scavengers that used to eat raw meat, or like we killed our prey with our spears and our bows and arrows, and then we ate like the raw meat, or we dehydrated it and stuff. For the last million years, we've kind of been cooking our meat over a fire, and we've adapted to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel the need to kind of deviate from that in favor of the jury's still out on as far as like, oh, there's this extremely extremely beneficial benefit to raw meat versus cooked. And it's like like the people that are like thriving on carnivore diets, we assume that they're like cooking it, over stoves and like baking it in ovens and things like that. Like, raw meat is kind of like underground, even in this underground thing of carnivore. So it's kind of like, and it's also like raw meat is more satiate. Maybe like the thing about you can't tolerate raw meat versus cooked meat is that raw meat is more like dense. Because when you cook meat, it like breaks down and it becomes more tender in a sense, like the fat renders and like the muscle fibers like break down and denature, So when you eat raw meat, like it's more dense, it still has a structure. So that might tie into why you can't tolerate it, but yeah.
Well, I can tolerate it fine. It's just like mentally, I'm just like, oh, I want to bake cupcakes. Let's go bake carnivore cupcakes or something like that.
Yeah, I never got into the carnivore like recipes, like oh here's carnivore waffles, or here's like carnivore flatbread, or I see those recipes on like YouTube and they look good, but it's more like there's so many different types of steak, and like there's so many different like parts of the animal, like, and ways to cook the animal. Like you can slow cook beef shank versus like frying up a steak. I'd rather like focus on that instead of like craving like these recipes that use egg whites. You have to mix it in with like gelatin and things like that. But I'm not like dismissing those. It's just that it's not for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it's just something like that I enjoy, so I'm like, why not do it? I like cooking. It passes the time. It gives me something to look forward to. So, I don't know.
Yeah. As long as we both enjoy like the cooking side of meat, and we both enjoy eating mostly meat.
Yeah.
And we recognize that like this is the best way to eat. This is the best way to live. This is how we are optimally designed. And let's stick to the carnivore diet as far as like and we have our different cravings as far as like what we crave on it, but we still recognize that meat is.
I agree. This is a long episode, and I think we covered everything. What do you think? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
We talked over a lot of different topics. You know, we got into we tied in carnivore and like our faith. You know, the metabolism, our individual backgrounds, and I think we yapped for a pretty long time, and we got it. We got a lot of stuff out there. This
Yeah.
was fun. This was
Yeah.
fun talking to you. You're a really interesting person, and I am glad that we had this conversation. You know,
Yeah, me
and I'd be
too.
open to having more conversations in the future with
Oh
you
yeah,
again.
definitely. I'm always looking for somebody that will come on like repeatedly. If it's somebody that I get along well with, and I feel like our conversation was pretty, like it wasn't like one of us was carrying the whole conversation. Like we were both putting a decent amount of effort into it, so that's great. This is gonna be the end of this episode, and it'll come out Wednesday. So sounds
All right.
good.
Nice to meet you. Peace.
Peace. In recording.